Hello, this is Dr. Tom O'Brien and welcome to Betrayal, the autoimmune disease solution they're not telling you. You're about to learn some incredibly valuable insights that will help you navigate this brave new world of environmental exposures that put us all at risk. Get ready to learn about leaky gut, vitamin D, and the true causes and solutions of rheumatoid arthritis as an example of autoimmune diseases. In the last episode of Betrayal, you learned what autoimmune disease actually is. You've seen the effect of autoimmune disease in the United States and other countries. You got a detailed insight into what functional medicine is and how it's different from conventional medicine. You've seen how medication is not always the answer, that instead it's essential to get to the root cause of the problem and fix that. You've also witnessed the inspiration of experiencing the emotional stories of the patients being healed by functional medicine practitioners. You've also got to know who I am and what the purpose of this documentary is. Now here's what you're going to learn from this episode specifically. You're going to see why a healthy gut is so important and how to avoid something called intestinal permeability or the leaky gut. You will see how rheumatoid arthritis and other autoimmune diseases are directly related to this leaky gut. As always, you'll hear leaky gut of patients who have experienced gut problems and how they turned it all around and got their lives back again. You'll also see the issue with vitamin deficiency and malabsorption and the dramatic effect it has on the diseases you are experiencing in your life. The most important deficiency for autoimmune diseases is vitamin D. In this episode, you will learn why this sunshine vitamin is so important and what you can do to ensure you have optimal levels that will protect you from disease. Get ready for an experience that will change your gut, your life, forever. Hold on, keep that thought. Change your gut, change your life. I'm happy to be quoted on that one.
For me, there have been a few pivotal events in my life, and both of them have impacted my own health. So the first one for me that was a tipping point was when I was a teenager. I suffered from chronic fatigue. And like a lot of people with chronic fatigue, I was, bedridden and I was seeking medical care but not getting any answers. And I was really frustrated, and eventually, after seeing several doctors, well, 5, I'm exaggerating, but it was 5. And
5 counts as more than several.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
That's a lot of factors.
Yeah, it's a lot, and just wasn't getting anywhere. And I eventually, thankfully, I think, to my parents, was referred on to an alternative medicine practitioner. So this was an amazing osteopath and naturopath in the Blue Mountains, Australia, where I was from. And we sat down and he counseled me through what was going on. Within a week, I was like 50% better.
A week?
Yeah.
1 week?
Yeah, 1 week.
5 specialists, 5 doctors.
5 specialists, yes. And months, and I was bedridden.
Months of being bedridden.
Yeah, and for me that was like, wow, healthy lifestyle and paying attention to what, these things that are within our control and how they impact our health is pretty important. So from there I became super motivated to live and eat well and look after myself. I then sort of gravitated more recently to the area of digestive health, and published a book in this area. And basically with autoimmunity, as you know, one of the fundamental features is, dysfunction of the gut mucosa.
That's the lining of the gut.
Exactly, the lining of the gut. And what that does is it sets up the perfect storm for autoimmune disease. It's really fundamental, and a lot of scientists know this now, that it is one of the characteristic features that meshes these seemingly different illnesses together. Of course, we look at autoimmunity as, different illnesses sometimes, but actually they're the same thing. There's a lot of underlying shared mechanisms, and that's the changing view of medicine. It's not about naming a disease, it's understanding why it's occurring. And in the core of autoimmune disease is this dysfunction of the gut mucosal barrier. So, in my mind, it's fundamental, both the microbiome itself, but also the health of the gut as a consequence or relationship to that. We know that the gut is fundamentally involved in the development of autoimmune diseases.
We test for celiac disease, but we also are testing for non-celiac gluten disorders and also non-gluten wheat issues. also leaky gut. And as we're testing these things, we can start to find the root causes of the autoimmune disease, because it seems like it all starts in the gut. So if we can heal the gut, we can treat the autoimmune disease. And we're seeing them in all stages. Some people may be have full-blown issues, and some people may just start to be having issues, experiencing pain or brain fog, all different types of symptoms. It could be even types of psoriasis, arthritis, pain in their bodies. So it really runs the gamut. You might see people just starting out with autoimmune, or you might see people like with full-blown MS. So we really see the gamut of situations. And when we start treating them, it's amazing results is what we're seeing with healing the gut.
Wait, what? Hold on. So if you've got a problem with your skin, you see a dermatologist. If you have a problem with your joints, you see a rheumatologist. If you see a problem with your brain, you see a neurologist, right? What's being suggested here is revolutionary. What if all of these diseases are all warning lights like you get on your car? There's something wrong in the car. So what if even all these warning lights go back to one place, one problem that contributes to all of them, and that problem was in the gut? What if by restoring the gut and creating a healthy environment in your gut, you could reverse your condition? Would you like to know how you could do that starting today? Let's dig in and get your gut healthy.
And as you've taught so many physicians and so many clients, Tom, is that what we're really finding is all starts with the gut. And what we've seen is that the foods that people are eating have a reactivity in the inner lining that develops this cross-reactivity of the immune system. And so as the food proteins cross, the immune system attacks it like a lock and key mechanism. That molecule then gets attacked a second time and finds a new home. If it's in the joints, it could be rheumatoid arthritis. If it's in the kidneys or joints, it could be lupus. And some of my favorite doctors are rheumatologists, and it's a very difficult specialty to do, but it's a little bit of a guess. And a lot of times we have patients that don't fit one clear entity. There is not a 100% specific test that tells you this is exactly what you have. A lot of times it's kind of a mosaic that a good rheumatologist will have to develop a objective diagnosis for to come up with a treatment plan to try to address it. For us, the reality is that they're all in the same mechanism in their essence with their inflammatory state. If we can calm that inflammation down, put the itis to sleep, and not allow this continued damage to go on.
Intestinal permeability is the space between two enterocytes.
Two cells in the
Two
intestine.
cells in the intestine. And generally they are very regulated, because this is one of the most important part of our immune integrity of the intestine. It has a very important role because, especially for water, electrolyte, and small molecules that are beneficial for our body, they can pass through. However, these spaces are closed for noxious or dangerous or toxic or allergenic or carcinogenic or autoimmunogenic molecules. It is a very complicated structure. There are more than 60 proteins, which means 60 genes that are regulating this space. In many autoimmune diseases, when it was checked, this intestinal permeability is increased. We are talking about a tight junction that is opened pathologically.
The junction between two cells.
You're right, yes.
Which
yes.
is called the tight junction.
The tight junction.
That can be, for different reasons, opened up.
That's right. But if there is a breach of this tight junction integrity, we are in problem. And there are a lot of factors, environmental factors, that are lodged in our intestinal ecosystem, in the intestinal lumen, that might affect this integrity of this apparatus
if you don't break down the food because of the foods you've eaten or the exposures you've had, you don't have acid, or you're not telling the pancreas to do its job, now all of a sudden we got food that's not being digested. So in the setting where there's going to be some permeability, the leakiness in the gut. Now that opening is not like it's not like an on-off switch. It's like a dimmer. Mm-hmm. It moves up and down. But if when it's open, we've got a whole bunch of food that's not digested, presenting itself to the immune system.
So it comes in through the open gates into the bloodstream. Underneath the one cell layer, right? There's only one cell between the food that we eat and us. One of the things I often say is if you think of your digestive tract as one long tube, 20, 25 feet, it's a donut. And if you stretch that donut out and you eat something and swallow it, and you look down the donut, it's still in the donut.
Right.
And it's got to go through the walls of the donut to get into us.
Right. And as you know, that area that the absorption is occurring is about as big as a doubles tennis court. It's pretty big. Mm-hmm. And it's one cell thick. Mm-hmm. And when you start to have openings, then the food particles can get through. Now you've got an activation of the immune system. And this is part of what we see in that continuum. We look at people and they say, wow, you have an activation of your immune system that's going on. Mm-hmm. And we see this, as you know, years before you start to develop symptoms.
That's the critical component right here, is that is one of the primary mechanisms that causes so much tissue damage that builds up and up and up, and eventually you get the symptoms.
Right, exactly.
But this mechanism is going on in the gut for a long time beforehand. In most, I don't know, I hesitate saying all, but in most autoimmune conditions, this mechanism about our gut and how we relate to our food has been going on for years.
Being a nutritionist, one of the pieces, and Jill Carnahan was talking about this, is that 2/3 of the immune system is in the digestive system. And the reason why it's there is that every day we take in pounds of substance through our mouth we call food, and it can be either really inflammatory or not. And the gut galt and malt, which are part of the gut immune system, are really important in terms of actually looking and saying, well, that apple looks good to me. The pesticide on the apple, you need to go to the liver and get detoxified, right, because you don't belong here. And so the immune system is mostly located in the digestive system, and the most inflammatory thing we do every day is eat.
Yes, I say often, every forkful of what we put in our mouths is either inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. There's no neutrals except healthy water. That's the only neutral. And so we want all of the food going in when we're in an inflamed state. We don't want to fuel any fire, so we don't want any gasoline to go on the fire. Why is diet so critically important to keep the diseases in check?
I think it's multifactorial. So I think that one huge side of it is focusing on the most nutrient-dense foods that we have available in the food supply. There is no shortage of calories in Western countries right now, but there is a huge shortage if you just buy regular, standard choices in the grocery store. Huge shortage in essential vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, fiber, essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. So we have these diets that are full of energy and actually not providing the raw materials that we need for all the chemical reactions happening within our bodies in every moment. So we need those nutrients to function. And if we want to be healthy, we need lots of them. So a key difference between a Western diet and the diets of all the healthiest people in the world is just the amount of nutrition per calorie. So by focusing on the most nutrient-dense foods, I achieve that high amount of vital nutrients per calorie that I'm consuming. But the other half of it is avoiding compounds in foods that stimulate the immune system. So I like to put all foods on a scale. So I like to look at what are the vital nutrients in this food and what are the compounds in this food that might undermine my health in some way. And there's a huge diversity of compounds that can undermine our health. So you can talk anywhere from refined sugars that might be disrupting hormones by causing a spike in blood sugar and therefore a large insulin release. You can be talking about compounds like gluten, which are inherently inflammatory, inherently damaging to the lining of the gut, inherently feed the wrong type of bacteria in the gut, and inherently stimulate the immune system. You can talk about other compounds, alpha-tomatine in tomatoes, which has been investigated as an adjuvant in vaccines. So it is so good at getting inside our bloodstream and stimulating our immune systems to attack that it can be put into a vaccine with a dead virus to ensure that your body's going to ramp up its immune response to develop immunity against that virus. It's great in vaccines, not great in foods when we're trying to calm down our immune system.
The one, though, I think is probably most relevant here besides salt is wheat. Now, wheat has always been kind of confusing to me because we know that without wheat, most likely modern civilization would not have been possible, because wheat is a very efficient way of producing lots of calories, lots of protein in a relatively small area and acres of farmland. The problem is that there's a strange interaction between people who have a certain genetic profile and the consumption of wheat. So in clinical practice, I saw a lot of patients with chronic disease, and besides clean up their diet, I would also have them stop eating wheat, and they would get better. It's just much, much better. Asthma, multiple sclerosis, eczema, schizophrenia. I mean, we're talking about significant conditions. Got better. Rheumatoid arthritis got better. Stop eating wheat. The thing with wheat was that a researcher by the name of Alessio Fasano found out that when people consume wheat, if they have a certain genetic type, they will cause the release of a molecule in the gut called zonulin. Now, what zonulin does, which is quite interesting, is it causes the space between the cells to open up. Now, the reason we produce zonulin initially was to protect ourselves from infectious organisms. When people are infected with cholera, the body intentionally releases the zonulin to cause the gut to open up, to wash a bunch of fluids into the gut, to wash away cholera, way of protecting ourselves. Well, the problem is that for some people, whenever they eat wheat, it causes the gut to open up and they get increased gut permeability. And when we lose gut permeability control, then what's in the gut enters the body more easily than it should. And what's in the gut? Well, what's in the gut are 10 times as many bacteria as we have cells in our body.
It might be a shock for you to find out that your debilitating diseases like rheumatoid arthritis or asthma or multiple sclerosis or eczema or schizophrenia can actually turn around by taking gluten and wheat out of your diet. It happens every day. Thousands and thousands of people. If you're battling a serious condition and you're not getting the results you want with the care you're currently doing, can you tell me why it wouldn't at least be worth a try? I know you love your cookies. We all love our cookies. But this might make a huge difference for you. People that do it see results in as little as a couple of days. A good minimum trial period is 30 days. So I want you to get the results from watching this. So I can encourage you to take that step today if you're battling a serious inflammatory condition, or if you just want to feel even better and have a hunch that this could make a difference for you, give it a try. Considering that you're more likely to have leaky gut than not having leaky gut, I want you to listen carefully for the next section on detecting the signs for intestinal permeability or the leaky gut. The reality is that having a leaky gut puts you at a serious risk of any of the terrible 80 estimated autoimmune diseases and the new ones that are being labeled. So this is something that you simply must rectify. Having a leaky gut and doing nothing about it is a very regrettable thing to do because the downward spiral is life-debilitating. It's much harder to turn a condition around rather than preventing it in the first place. Whatever you're facing, get into the business of being preventative. And let me tell you, it doesn't stop. The diseases keep coming. And you can stop them in their tracks by restoring your gut. That's where your protection is. First, you've got to diagnose if the problem's there. See for yourself. If you can see the signs, you'll take your protocols much more seriously. So listen very carefully to the experts that you're about to hear and see the simple ways that you can test to see if, in fact, you have a leaky gut.
The other piece I don't want to forget to mention to you, though, is in this inflammatory environment of the gut, digestion and malabsorption, malabsorption are de rigueur. So that's something else. They're not, these individuals tend not to be digesting very efficiently, or once the gut's damaged, they're not absorbing. And again, we can think about this in a continuum. So these are signs you might pick up early on, or I will pick up early on in my practice before full-blown autoimmunity is expressed. So it's another important piece of the
puzzle. What are some of those signs at early stages of autoimmunity?
So evidence of maldigestion, maybe gas and bloating after meals, intolerance of eating fats, for example, maybe undigested food in their bowel movements, or evidence of fatty stool, bowel movement, sheen in the toilet, that kind of thing. The transit time has changed, so maybe they have multiple loose bowel movements per day, or just frank diarrhea, or maybe on the other side they're constipated. I mean, all of these things are clues to the underlying imbalances that can set them up for autoimmunity should they be vulnerable, that they are in place. And those are all extremely important to correct.
One of the easy suggestive indicators of transit time, because you talk about that and people don't know what that means. It means from the time you eat something until the residue is eliminated. One of the easy ways of determining that is to eat 2 ears of corn.
That's right.
And
that's very old school. And it works.
And it works because you look in your bowel movements, is there any corn there? Just look in the bowl and you'll see. And that's the first, when you first see it, okay, that's how long it takes. And then when you last see the corn residue, that's how long it takes.
That's right. That's right. And you'd be surprised how either extremely rapid, and so there's going to be malabsorption if it's too quick, or conversely, it takes a couple days to have everything move through. And then you're being exposed to all these endotoxins. I mean, bowel movements, they're not meant to be around for that long, right? They're meant to be around, maybe at the most they move through over about 24 hours time.
Right. Your bowel movements are not supposed to smell when you first eliminate. If they do, then something's putrefying. There has to be something out of balance there. Now, if it sits around for a day or two, that's a very different situation, right? I mean, it's kind of awkward conversations, but people want to know.
Poop is important in this world. There's no doubt. I mean, it's where the bulk of our immune system is here. If your doctor's not talking about poop, you're not having the full conversation that you need to.
You're missing. It's a missing link.
I'm a big fan of capturing as much information as we can, not getting too analytical at first. So this is where the timeline comes in, but so is food, mood, poop journaling. So
food, mood, poop.
Poop, yeah. So I actually have people track their food, mood, and poop, and I'll start slowly. So we might just start looking at, what am I eating every day? Just capture it. And then I might have them spend some time there. Is there fat, fiber, and protein in every meal so I can mitigate my blood sugar? Also a mediator. Am I getting enough color in my day? So take out their highlighters and start to play a game with themselves to see, like, what can I get that's blue in my diet? Do I need more blueberries or blackberries or purple potatoes eaten cold for some good resistant starch? How can I start to play with my food? And then I have them start tracking their poop. So all we have to do is look in the bowl before we flush. We can look at a Bristol stool chart so we can write numbers down and start to track what's my output. So what am I actually eliminating? After that, as we're gathering, I'm on week 3, I've got my food tracking, I've got my poop tracking, I'm not overanalyzing. Then we start to track mood. And by mood, I mean any sign or symptom. I'm not looking at it in relation to, I ate and I feel sleepy. I'm looking for anything that comes up through the day. 2 p.m., I feel bloated. I feel like I need a nap at 4 o'clock. Just start to track things. And then afterwards, we go back either to a practitioner or with ourselves with an objective eye and go, what kind of associations might I be able to make here that help me understand my mediators better?
Where are the patterns? What can you see?
Exactly. And that's part of our systems or frameworks that we work into when we're thinking functionally, which is really appreciating the individual and thinking of the whole.
There is a connection between leaky gut and arthritis. According to the CDC, that's the Centers for Disease Control, the dire prevalence of arthritis is as follows. The most common form of arthritis is osteoarthritis. Other common rheumatic conditions include gout, fibromyalgia, and rheumatoid arthritis. An estimated 30.8 million adults had osteoarthritis from 2008 to 2011. Nearly 1 in 2 people may develop symptomatic knee osteoarthritis by the age of 85. 2 in 3 people who are obese may develop symptomatic osteoarthritis in their lifetime. 1 in 4 people may develop painful hip arthritis by the age of 85. By 2040, an estimated 78 million Americans ages 18 years or older are projected to have doctor-diagnosed arthritis.
I was diagnosed just after my first was born, but retrospectively thinking, I could see that I'd had it for a lot longer. I went through a series of years of medications, and eventually the medication stopped working, and they wanted to put me on a stronger medication, and I didn't feel so great about that. And so I waited. I took like 6 months to think about it, and then at that point I found Dr. Osborne, and we were able to go forward with what I do now. But something had to happen because I couldn't take care of my family. I was in so much pain that I couldn't. I was just tired all the time, chronic fatigue, and so.
Mm. And what are the, okay, so after your first baby was born?
Uh-huh.
You've got more than one then?
I have 3.
3. And it's just like, okay, so your condition was like rheumatoid arthritis?
Rheumatoid arthritis, yeah.
And so like, how did that show up?
I woke up in the middle of the night after my first baby was born and my foot was throbbing. I couldn't sleep. I thought I'd broken my foot. We went in and had it x-rayed, and it wasn't broken.
What do you think it was?
I didn't know what it was. I was oblivious to that it could even be rheumatoid arthritis, because that's what 20-something-year-olds don't get rheumatoid. But they sent me to a rheumatologist and confirmed that that's what it was. But before that, before I even got pregnant, before I even got married, I would have shoulder pains that would last for 24 hours and then just go away. I didn't know what it was. I had wrist problems. Things would just flare up but I didn't know it was a flare up. It was just pain. And then it would go away after 24 hours, and it was over. It was gone, so I didn't worry about it.
So if somebody comes to me with autoimmunity, by the way, I just want to throw out there that I have people who come to me with already diagnosed autoimmunity, or I have people come to me who just feel unwell for myriad reasons, and who I am looking very carefully for signs of early autoimmunity.
Yes.
So there's this big continuum, again, as we mentioned in the beginning, that I'm looking for in all of my patients. So really everybody who walks through my office door is going to be evaluated for evidence of autoimmunity. And we can circle back to that and talk more about it. But if somebody comes to me and they've been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, or they clearly have rheumatoid arthritis, we establish with the various antibodies, right? We might look for rheumatoid factor, anti-nuclear antibody, CCP. But I'm also really thinking functionally, or from a systems perspective. I know that intestinal permeability has been demonstrated, particularly in rheumatoid arthritis and celiac, but Fasano put that on the map. Intestinal permeability is a necessary piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
Dysbiosis, bacterial imbalance in the gut, is also a very necessary piece of the autoimmune puzzle. Plus, I'm thinking about environmental exposures. What factors are they being inundated with, or were they at some time in their life that might be promoting this? I mean, the easiest example is celiac disease, right? I mean, it's gluten. So we know it's gluten, it's genes, it's intestinal permeability. Now there are other pieces that can promote the celiac. And just like we'd be thinking about with rheumatoid arthritis, is there bacterial imbalance happening in the gut? I want to measure that, find out. We know there are specific microbes that can initiate that autoimmune mechanism, what we call molecular mimicry. So I want to see if there's any evidence of those. Even if there isn't, if there's an imbalance of good guys, maybe insufficient good guys, but players that aren't so beneficial, or if there's evidence of inflammation in the gut using a stool test, I need to correct that. I'm also, as I mentioned earlier, looking for intestinal permeability. I think the research is sound enough where if somebody presents to me anywhere on the autoimmune continuum, I am assuming intestinal permeability, period. Yes. I don't even need to do the evaluation. It's there, right? Yes. It has to be. It's one of the underlying
It's the gateway into the development.
Correct. Yeah. So we can just go in there and deal with the inflammation and treat the gut and so forth.
Well, we ended up going to see Osborne because we had no other options. But what happened was after a while they wanted to put me on biologics because the medication that they were trying wasn't working. And again, I'm not science-minded. I couldn't explain to you why I didn't want to do it, but I didn't feel good about it. I took 6 months to think about it because I wanted to figure out, should I really do this? Is this the right thing for me? Well, I still, it just seems so extreme. But I had an extreme disease. And so eventually I decided, okay, this is what we'll do. I'll take them. And so we had to fill out financial forms, and my husband's self-employed, and so it became very complicated on how we would even be able to pay for the medication. We did not qualify for any of the financial aid, and so we were like, what do we do now? What do we do? And I work out at a CrossFit gym, and they had told me about Dr. Osborne. I worked out with his wife. I have a friend from church that went to see him. And with all these people talking to me, I felt like it was heaven, directing me in the way that he would have me go and teach me that this is right for you. Because it wasn't, you go in there and they tell you grain-free and you got to cut all these other things out, and you're like, if it hadn't have happened the way that it happened, the influences from different people, me recognizing that this was the only other choice that I had to receive relief from this disease and to make my body as healthy as possible so I could be with my family, so I could run and be active. Because my kids are athletic. I didn't want to have them to push me in a wheelchair to their game or whatever. Again, extreme. But it was, that's the only way I could even stick with it, because heaven's hand was in it. I knew that it was guidance.
A well-known keynote speaker, Les Brown, has once said, never tell a point without a story, and never tell a story without a point. So here's a story with a point. Hearing these stories can be some of the most valuable parts of this series, as you'll be able to self-identify with these patients and get an idea of what things you may be overlooking in your health. Overlooking a vital area of your health can be fatal. Often it's just one or two missing factors that are keeping people sick and debilitated. Wait till you hear what was actually this patient's true source of their problem.
Okay, so a couple of case studies. I want to tell you about, we'll call her Laura. This is one of my early patients. More than 20 years ago, let's say. And she's a good example because we worked together for a long time. I was learning about how to treat autoimmune illnesses with her. I didn't know that much about it in those days. And she stayed with me for 7 years. And at the end of that 7 years, it's completely basically reversed all her autoimmune illnesses. They were all gone. But it took that long. And I think she taught me that I could probably do a case like that now in 2 years instead of 7, but I was learning. She taught me that there were 3 really distinct phases that we worked with that led her to these ever-increasing breakthroughs. The first phase was very simple, and back in those days I didn't have my clinical model, and you probably remember the years when we did all these powders, the detox powders, yes. Right? And they had the elimination diet. And all these
this
things.
Powder for a while, and then this powder. And
yeah, and we gave those to every patient. So we did basically what we would call now probably like a liver detoxification program with Laura, and 50-60% of her symptoms cleared up within like the first year. So that was very strict gluten-free diet, these big drinks of these detox powders on a regular basis every day, complete elimination diet, and the basic supplementation I was doing at the time. And when you're a young doctor, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what's going to happen later. It's hard to have a context. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, wow, that's about as good as she could get. And that's amazing that half her symptoms are gone. She's reduced her medications. She's not getting worse, which she was before. And then I started to learn more about functional medicine, and I realized that, oh, we're supposed to be testing everyone's gut. She didn't have any gut complaints. It didn't occur to me. But in those early years of practice, I learned from some of my original functional medicine teachers that just test everyone's gut no matter what, and that autoimmune diseases are often involved with major gut problems. In Laura's case, there were absolutely no digestive symptoms. So in my young doctor mind, it made no sense to test her gut. So I waited like a year or two maybe. Finally, we tested her gut. It turned out she had multiple parasitic infections. And lo and behold, she did have a leaky gut, which now we all know probably accompanies every autoimmune case that we ever work with.
So likely most of the parasitic infestations we don't have symptoms for. Because if they're going to live in us, they can't irritate us so much that we get wise and try and get rid of them. So this was a case where for years she didn't have any gut symptoms.
Yeah, and the sad thing, and I'll take the blame for this, is that she was coming in and out of my office on a regular basis with these gut infections, and I neglected to test her. And now, I literally won't treat a patient in my clinic now today unless they do a gut test. I won't even talk to you. You can't even come in. I won't even give you the time of day. Because if people aren't willing to make that commitment and take that step, I know that potentially we're undermining the program. It's that important.
It is that important, yes.
You know, and I was giving a lecture to 250 doctors about a month ago. And I said all this, and you could tell by the reaction of the crowd, probably 20 or 30% of them thought, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Their arms crossed, and I know.
And in fact, I know because I got emails later from these doctors saying, it was to talk about H. pylori and autoimmunity and stuff. I got these emails from these doctors saying, you know, what do you think I should do? I didn't do her gut test. I really don't think she needs it. I know you should say I would do a gut test, you know. So it's like, we have to test the gut. Yeah. Anyway, super important. So anyways, Laura taught me that lesson, and you know, since then I've been really strict about it. And
so you found that she had parasites, then what?
Yeah, she had a really bad Giardia infestation, really bad Giardia. And when we cleared the Giardia, lo and behold, you know, another 20-30% improvement. So now we've gone from, I have lupus, I'm in a lot of pain, I'm depressed, my hormones are horrible, my life is over, I don't know what to do, these medications aren't working scenario, to maybe a 60-70% improvement. Great quality of life. Again, I'm thinking, this is amazing. I can't believe how well this works.
The underlying causes are often so different to what you expect. Would you have thought that parasites could have had any connection to lupus? The truth is that it did for that woman, as it has for many others, and what you're about to find that the root cause behind the problem is often hidden far beneath the surface. What you're about to learn is that it's not just toxins, but it's also about what you're not getting. Getting vital vitamins is essential for having your body function properly and optimally. Absorbing your vitamins is equally as important, as without these nutrients being transported effectively through the body, you'll still be vitamin deficient. Even if you're obediently taking your supplements, if you're not absorbing them, you're going to have a problem. Malabsorption is one of the most overlooked reasons for autoimmune disease.
This is fundamental to functional medicine. Just because you know the name of the disease, you don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? If you say someone's got rheumatoid arthritis or MS, all it means is you've labeled people according to their symptoms.
Yes.
You have neurologic autoimmune disease or you have joint autoimmune disease, but it doesn't tell you why.
That's a critical message.
It's a critical message. And so for each person, you have to look down into the depths of these categories: diet, stress, allergens, toxins, microbes. Look at their genetics and see how these things interact. And then also look at the other side of the equation. What might they be missing that they don't have to function properly? We know, for example, vitamin D deficiency is linked to multiple sclerosis and other autoimmune diseases. But adequate levels of omega-3 fats, adequate levels of vitamin D and zinc, adequate sleep, adequate movement, adequate diet, all these things are necessary for creating a thriving human. So you have to basically take out the bad stuff and then put in the good stuff, and the body will hit a new equilibrium.
We talk about digestion a lot, you know, in clinical practice. If I see a person with autoimmunity, automatically I assume there's some digestive issues. It's across the board. You just see it all the time. And one of the things that people forget about is when you have the symptoms of indigestion, what's the first thing a doctor gives you? Hey doc, I've got gas, I got nausea, I got bloating. Oh, no problem. Take this proton pump inhibitor. Take this omeprazole, right? You'll see it as Nexium, right? The purple pill. And so people will take this and they're not conscious of what's happening. The reality is we have in our stomach a pH of about 1.7, 1.9, if you're lucky 1.5. What does that mean? That means you have battery acid in your stomach. You literally have a substance that can like tear down bone. You can break apart bone. And that's actually a good thing. The battery acid in your stomach, that high acidity, low pH, is actually great. You have a bunch of mucus there, you have some protective compounds. It's extremely healthy to have good acid. You need to break down your food and you need to protect yourself. Why do you have a vat acid in your stomach, a vat of acid in the first place? Because you're taking in food. And before we had refrigeration, that food would have bacterium and viruses and parasites. So you need that acid. It's good for you, not bad for you. When people take these medications, they increase their pH to a 5. What does that mean? That means you went from battery acid in your stomach to table vinegar. Literally, acetic acid is a pH of 5. So imagine yourself, don't do this at home, imagine yourself taking a bowl or barrel with battery acid and putting a T-bone steak in it. And now imagine yourself taking that same bowl and putting a T-bone steak in, vinegar, right? Which one's going to digest? Which one's going to break down? Because primarily the stomach acid is needed to break apart proteins. You pull it apart into its amino acid sequences, things called peptides. And if you don't break down those proteins, not only can you not absorb the amino acids, so you have problems with mood and mental function and building up lean muscle mass and energy production, you don't have enough protein for that. Commonly, that happens a lot with autoimmune clients. And they're not even associated, they're not breaking down and absorbing their foods. But here's the kicker, and this is from some research in Vienna by Eva Untersmeyer. She found that when people had a mild shift in gastric acid, they increase the reactions to food by 10.5-fold. So people go on these acid-blocking medications, and within a few weeks' time, they start producing antibodies to these undigested proteins in their intestinal tract. If you pair that with a leaky gut, you've got a recipe for disaster. So people start out doing great. They take these medications, they end up with food reactions. Not a good thing.
There are tests that look specifically for intestinal permeability, and the repair program is a fairly basic one that works 95% of the time, and it's a glutamine probiotic digestive enzyme. Sometimes you need betaine HCl. One of the fascinating things I've always said to my naturopathic friends, who are some of my best friends, all of the internists think you have too much acid, so they give you the little purple pill. All the naturopaths think you have too little acid, so they give you acid. And who's right? And I think there are hints and there are ways to test to see who needs what. And typically what I find is most people don't have enough acid. And if you've had your gallbladder out, you've had other issues with your digestive tract, it's typically a low acid issue, not a high acid issue. So there are great protocols that are highly effective, that work. The key though is to know what you're dealing with on the front end.
Going back to this maldigestion, malabsorption, in this population, we're going to see evidence of micronutrient insufficiency, so early stage inadequate micronutrient status, or frank deficiency, where things are very severely imbalanced. Maybe we'll see insufficient magnesium or zinc or B12 is extremely common.
How might they see, what might be some clues of insufficiencies or deficiencies?
Well, they're widespread. So probably with B12, one of the first things we're going to see is fatigue. Mm-hmm. B12 is a major player in our ability to detox. So maybe signs associated with detoxification, easy headaches or quick headaches, odor intolerance. Another big sign of B12 insufficiency would be neuropathy. So tingling hands, tingling feet, maybe pain, burning sensation. I mean, they're pretty widespread.
Mm-hmm.
Magnesium, you can have little eyebrow twitches.
Little twitches, pop, 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 pop.
Or maybe you have leg cramps, you're lying in bed.
Some people don't notice that they've got eye twitches. So if you see that your child or your spouse, and when you're talking to you, looking at them and you see their eyelids going, and you say, "What's wrong with your eyelid?" They say, "Well, nothing." What? You say, "Well, it's twitching." No.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I don't feel it.
That's right.
But that could easily be an insufficiency.
Yes, absolutely. You might have muscle pain, or kind of tire easily, or just feel muscle fatigue, or maybe more lactic acid buildup. Again, cramps, calf cramps, feet. Foot cramps, those can also be potassium. We don't want to forget that, but that would be another nutrient that we might not absorb as well, or we're not consuming enough of. I mean, it's pretty de rigueur in our culture not to be eating enough of potassium or magnesium for that matter, or B12. So we're not. So I'm talking about digestion and absorption here, but then we can go back to diet, because really, by and large, many folks aren't getting the adequate levels of nutrients they need in their diet, let alone not being able to absorb them. Just kind of moving from this a little bit tangentially, many of my patients come to me and they say, I eat great. I put so much attention around what I eat. How can I be deficient? How can I possibly not have enough magnesium? Because it's so common that I see magnesium deficiency.
Well, that's a big clue, isn't it, right there? You have to look to the gut right away.
That's right.
What's going on in the gut?
And also demand. So here's another interesting thing that we forget about. Really, two pearls, I think. One is that when you're under inflammation, again, wherever you are in this continuum, full-blown autoimmunity or, early inflammation moving towards autoimmunity, inflammation is a very metabolically demanding process. It's extremely metabolically demanding. You're going to be using all of your protein reserves, those minerals that we were talking about, some of those vitamins, those are going to be going towards stoking this inflammation if it's not quenched.
Right, so it's the resources going to the armed forces. It's going to the immune system, so you're draining the bank to support the immune system to protect you.
Yes, so one of the amazing things with regard to inflammation is that we can see muscle breakdown. So people might wonder, why am I unable to make muscle as I force myself to work out? I don't really want to work out because I feel lousy and I'm really tired in this inflammatory process. But it becomes difficult to make muscle, or the body is just going to be liberating the protein from muscle to serve the purposes of inflammation.
Because the priority is to save your life.
Exactly.
To protect you.
Exactly. So as far as the immune system is concerned, yes, fighting this inflammatory battle takes precedence, and the resources will be grabbed from wherever they're needed. So that's a very important thing. The other piece is that when we're detoxing, we use up those molecules involved in detoxification. So if you're using methyl donors to detoxify, or you're using the all-important glutathione, one of the body's main antioxidants, or if you're using taurine or glycine, some of the amino acids involved in detox, those are spent in the process of detoxification. We don't recycle and reuse. They're spent, and they need to be replaced. So if you're detoxing quite a bit, those nutrients have to be replaced.
So what do you say to a person who comes in and they've got signs of toxicity, they've got signs of insufficiency, some nutrient insufficiencies, and they say, well, I take vitamins, doc. I take one a day, every day. I take my multiple every day.
Yeah, so I mean, we walk through some variation of what we've been talking about here, in all of the many levels at which we are not able to meet either demand. So our body needs more than we're supplying, or we are not breaking down and absorbing. Of course, we can look at micronutrient quality too, and arguably most one-a-days are not worth a whole lot, just the quality of the nutrient itself. It's a little bit heartbreaking to me to have to explain this to people, because I appreciate how hard folks are working at doing right by themselves and wanting to be healthy. And so it's heartbreaking for me to say, well, in fact, this is what's going on, and even though you're working on this so hard, you're not quite doing what you need to be, and it's broader than that.
Do you think that a vitamin D insufficiency or a vitamin D deficiency may put people more at risk of developing an autoimmune disease?
We know that. We observe that the patients with autoimmune disease have low levels of vitamin D. This is sure. We have no doubt about that. I studied that and some patients very low levels. But some authors, and I ask, this is harmful or protective? We don't know the correct answer. But I know that vitamin D is essential to maintain the equilibrium in the autoimmune system, in the immune system. So I must supplement these patients with vitamin D.
Having adequate amounts is essential to maintaining balance.
Yes, balance between, especially the T cells.
Yes.
We must maintain the balance. To maintain the balance, we must supplement with vitamin D. This is my opinion.
Yes. And is there a target level in the blood that you shoot for with your patients for vitamin D?
A target?
Yes, like the goal to if they're low, what level do you want to get them up to?
In my patients, the patients with levels less than 20 nanograms by milliliter, I supplement them.
Yes. And do you recheck them in the future?
Yes, yes, of course.
And what level do you target to get them to?
30 nanograms.
Somewhere above 30?
30 or above.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
It's important to see the levels in the winter and in the summer.
Yes.
Are different.
So vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, it's this steroid hormone that we produce when we are exposed to sun or when we consume foods rich in vitamin D. And, many people know this is the thing that takes in calcium from your intestinal tract, but they don't know that it's the most important immune-changing substance. It will alter your immune cell function more than anything else. I saw this in some research, it was fascinating, on MS in mice, where this researcher, Colleen Hayes from University of Wisconsin-Madison, she was actually able to reverse MS in an animal model by giving adequate vitamin D. And then I also saw this in my own clients, where clients were coming in and they had chronic musculoskeletal pain. We got their vitamin D level up and the pain went away. So I started diving into the research, and sure enough, there's Mayo Clinic proceedings, there's stuff from Saudi Arabia. As people get their vitamin D level up about 40 to 60 nanograms per ml, you start seeing the pain levels go down. I mean, who would have thought that? There are so many people who are taking non-steroid anti-inflammatories, they're taking aspirin, they're taking all these things to calm down their pain. But maybe if they got enough sun, they could calm their pain down. So what is enough sun? That's a great question. The amount is something called a minimal erythemal dose. So if I have light skin, and if you're Caucasian like myself, 10, 15 minutes of light pinking of the skin, that'll do it. And if I have 6%, so my face, neck, hands, 6% of my body, and I'm out and I get my minimal erythemal dose, about 10, 15 minutes for Caucasian skin, I'll get about 600 IUs. So you can basically multiply 6% times 100, so 600 IUs, right? If you have olive tone skin, you'll double that. Maybe you need 30, 45 minutes. If you have very dark skin, then you would need about an hour and 20 minutes. So who really has the time, with darker skin, a person to go out in the middle of the day for an hour and 20 minutes, right? So supplementation is often recommended. Usually you can get about 3,000, 4,000 IUs per day to bring your levels up. And if you do that consistently over time, you want to be looking to make sure you're at about 40 to 60 nanograms per ml, something your doctor can order as a 25-hydroxy-D test. Super easy to do. Your pain might lessen, your mood will usually improve, and your autoimmune symptoms can dampen as well.
In the topic of environmental exposures, let's move on to vitamin D, where people are selecting an environmental exposure, a food or a vitamin that they're taking. How does that impact on autoimmune diseases?
Of course. We are having a huge amount of data about anti-inflammatory effects of vitamin D. We know vitamin D is not a vitamin. This is the first thing. It's liposoluble. It's named vitamin, but it's an hormone. It's a steroid hormone. As any steroid hormone has a nuclear receptor, and is a key factor for transcription of cytokines. So it is kind of brand steroid or mild steroid, if you want to say. Okay? So it will be anti-inflammatory. But there is a lot of problems of pathways that you are looking in the autoimmune diseases. If you see lupus, you have 4 or 5 things that gave a lot of problems. You use sunscreen. The skin is the only way we can make the synthesize the pre-hormone. Okay, you have to eat a lot of fish, fat fish, to have some little bit of vitamins. So you have to take some sun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So having a little sun.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Without sunscreen.
Yes, about 10 minutes a day. Why not?
Good.
Why not? Sunscreen is also is a problem. Of course, for lupus patients, we don't want to put them on sun, because sun is a trigger of the disease. But at the same time, it's one of the environmental factors that are being damn deficient to vitamin D. It's a paradox. Okay?
Yes.
You do that. Then you have the drugs who blocks the metabolic pathways of the synthesis of vitamin D. The other steroids, other hormones, a lot of drugs you use to treat them. Organ failure, renal failure, hepatic failure, a lot of things you have. And the epigenetic factors. There is a strange mechanism in lupus, in other disease. You know what is hypermethylation? Hypermethylation is DNA hypermethylation. It's what we are having when we have a lot of inflammation. You don't have DNA breakage, you don't have DNA mutation, but you have hypermethylation of the histones and the double helix, and it will be a little bit different, expressing some of the proteins you are expressing.
And is that more common with low vitamin D levels?
Yes, because you will synthesize low effective metabolic pathways. Enzymes that does the first hydroxylation will be less synthesized. You will have less vitamin D having lupus. And some people say that is the difference is because they have lupus or because they don't take sun. And the answer is the two, of course.
Yes.
The problem is the two.
And I think for people on my end of it, where you can see the changes happen and you want other people to make the change, I have to hold that respect for them. If they can't do it, they can't do it, because they're the ones that have to make the choice. You go see the doctors, you go check the stuff online, but you're the one that has to do it. You're the one that has to make that effort. You have that family support, but you are still the only one that puts food in your mouth. You're the only one that can make those changes. All of the support that you can get from anybody, all the science, that's not what makes the change. You make the change. It's possible, and there are more obstacles than just putting food in your mouth. There are emotional issues, there are psychological things that go on in being able to change. And so those things have to be reached as well in order to find the healing. And you're the only one, I was the only one that could do it for myself. Yes, I received help from other people, but they didn't do it. I did it. I was the one that did it. And it was, okay, the only thing, heaven helped me, that's for sure, but I was the one that had to make those choices. And so someone else that wants to make those choices has to realize that no one's going to do it for them. They have to do it for themselves. You can make excuses, and sometimes those excuses hold us back. But if we can push past those excuses and look at reality, then there will be healing. There will be hope step by step. They'll be able to make the changes that they need to make. So for people on the other side that are looking in at people like me, I think a deep respect is necessary as well, even if they're not willing to do what I've done. That deep respect will create a harmony. And when there's harmony, good things happen and people find healing.
If you have any inflammation, if you have an autoimmune disease, or you think you might have an autoimmune disease, I encourage you to listen to this program, to hear the experts, to understand there's a new way of thinking about the model of chronic disease, particularly autoimmune disease, that is through the lens of functional medicine, and through that lens, you can find a pathway to health.
In the next episode, you're going to learn about healthy bacteria for your gut and how you can reverse the negative impacts of not having enough of the healthy bacteria in your gut. You'll learn how to restore and repopulate a vital aspect of your gut bacteria, which you'll come to fully understand. This vital key to gut health is called the microbiome. Tragically, doctors for a long time have viewed gut bacteria as something that needs to be gotten rid of. And this flawed perspective has left many of us stripped from our healthy building blocks and the consequent problems we are facing because of this essential missing link. You'll also see the link between the gut and skin infections and how these socially challenging problems like acne and eczema that you or a loved one may be facing can be totally turned around without taking any harmful drugs and rather addressing the underlying aggressors that are causing the reaction and restoring the gut bacteria, as we will show you how to do. Make sure you don't miss out on this essential episode. You'll learn how microbiome is the key to a healthy gut, as well as how the microbiome regulates, that means controls, the immune system. You'll learn how the microbiome is affected at birth. We'll give you the steps to check the status of your gut's microbiome. We'll also show the solution for a healthy microbiome. You're going to experience some amazing case studies of patients who were healed by creating healthy microbiomes. You'll see the impact of the foods you eat on making or breaking your healthy gut microbiome. We'll also show you a broad picture by showing how autoimmune disease compares between the Western world and third world countries.